The porcelain vase exploded against the stone wall, shards glittering like fallen stars across the ancient throne room. Princess Celine's scream tore through the palace, a sound of pure, wordless fury that made even the battle-hardened guards flinch. "She's destroying the sacred chamber again," a courtier gasped, pressing against the corridor wall as another crash echoed from within. Inside, 17-year-old Celine stood among the ruins of priceless artifacts, her chest heaving, tears streaming down her face. Her hands moved frantically, desperate gestures no one understood. They thought she was cursed, possessed by demons, a stain on the legendary bloodline of Alpha King Aldemar. But she wasn't mad. She was drowning. "Contain her before she hurts herself," the royal advisor, Lady Morgana, commanded from the doorway, her cold eyes gleaming with satisfaction. This was exactly what she needed. More proof that the deaf princess was unfit to inherit anything. 4 guards approached Celine cautiously, as if she were a wild animal. She backed against the wall, her violet eyes wild with fear and frustration. She tried again to make them understand, her hands forming shapes, pointing, pleading. They saw only chaos. "The king will have no choice now," Morgana whispered to her son. "She must be locked away. For everyone's safety." From the shadows near the servants' entrance, a young woman with unusual amber eyes watched the scene unfold. Kale, a lowly Omega servant, had been cleaning the outer chambers when the screaming started. But where others saw madness, she saw something entirely different. She saw a girl trying desperately to speak. Kale's grandmother had been deaf, a war veteran who'd taught Kale the ancient signing language before she died. As Celine's hands moved in frantic, crude gestures, Kale's breath caught. The princess had invented her own symbols, her own language, born from absolute isolation. Without thinking, Kale stepped forward from the shadows. "Don't!" a guard hissed, but Kale ignored him. She walked slowly toward the princess, her hands rising into the ancient signs her grandmother had taught her. A simple phrase. "I see you." Celine froze, her scream dying in her throat. For the first time in her life, someone was speaking her language. What Celine signed back would change the kingdom forever. Celine stared at the Omega servant, her body trembling. The girl's hands were still raised, forming shapes that looked almost like the symbols Celine had created alone in her room, but more refined, more purposeful. "I see you," Kale signed again, slower this time. Celine's throat tightened. She raised her shaking hands and signed back clumsily. "You understand?" Kale's face broke into a gentle smile. "Yes, I will teach you." The guards exchanged confused glances. Lady Morgana's jaw clenched. What sorcery is this? Over the next 3 weeks, something miraculous happened. The princess's screams stopped completely. Every afternoon, Kale came to Celine's chambers and taught her the ancient sign language, a system created centuries ago by deaf wolf warriors. Celine absorbed it desperately, like someone dying of thirst finally finding water. For the first time, she could express complex thoughts. Her loneliness, her dreams, her frustration at being treated like a broken thing. "My grandmother lost her hearing in the Great War," Kale explained one afternoon, her hands moving gracefully. "She taught me signs were not weakness, they were power. A secret language enemies couldn't intercept." Celine signed back, her movements becoming more confident. "Why does everyone fear what they don't understand?" "Because understanding requires effort. Fear is easier." Their bond deepened with each lesson. Kale learned that Celine wasn't just deaf. She could sense vibrations through the ground, feel emotional frequencies others missed. Her disability had heightened other senses to extraordinary levels. One evening, as they practiced in the garden, Celine suddenly grabbed Kale's arm, her eyes wide. She pointed to the ground, then signed frantically. "Someone coming. Angry. Dangerous." Seconds later, 3 royal guards appeared, their faces hard. "Omega Kale, you are summoned before King Aldemar. There are questions about your influence over the princess." Kale's blood ran cold. This was Morgana's doing. Celine stepped between them, her hands moving in sharp, angry signs. The guards looked baffled, but her meaning was clear in her fierce stance. They will not take you. In the throne room, King Aldemar sat wearily on his ancient seat, grey streaking his dark hair. Morgana stood beside him, whispering poison. This Omega has bewitched your daughter, my king. Dark magic is the only explanation. The doors burst open. Celine strode in, head high, with Kale behind her. For the first time in her life, the princess signed directly to her father, her movements deliberate and clear. Aldemar's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Then he did something that shocked the entire court. He began to weep. King Aldemar rose from his throne, his massive frame trembling. The most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, who'd never shown weakness in battle, openly wept as his daughter signed to him. Father, I am not broken. I have been trying to speak to you my whole life. An elderly scholar rushed forward with parchment, frantically translating Celine's signs aloud. The court watched in stunned silence as 17 years of silence finally found voice. This Omega, Kale, she gave me language. She gave me dignity. She saw me as a person, not a curse. Aldemar descended the steps and pulled Celine into his arms. Forgive me, he whispered, knowing she couldn't hear but hoping she could feel his remorse. He turned to Kale, his voice thick with emotion. You will be protected under royal decree. Anyone who harms you answers to me. Morgana's face paled, but she bowed stiffly. How generous, my king. That night, Kale revealed the truth she'd been hiding. In Celine's chambers by candlelight she signed, I come from Shadowpine Village. The Shadowfang clan destroyed it when I was 12. Everyone died. I survived by hiding. Celine's hands moved quickly. But Shadowfang was destroyed in the Great Purge 20 years ago. That's what everyone believes. But I've seen their marks in the Blackwood Forest. They're regrouping. Planning something. Before Celine could respond, she gasped, pressing her hand to the stone floor. The vibrations were wrong. Chaotic, violent. She signed urgently. Something's coming. Many somethings. From the north gate. Kale's eyes widened. I believe you. We need to warn. They hadn't come to conquer. They'd come to steal something from the royal vault, and they'd succeeded. A guard burst through the door, his face white with terror. Attack! Shadowfang raiders at the north gate. They breached the outer wall. Celine was already moving, pulling Kale toward the corridor. As they ran, palace bells began to toll, the sound Celine couldn't hear but could feel vibrating through every stone. In the chaos, Aldemar was organizing the defense when Celine and Kale reached him. Celine signed rapidly, and the elderly scholar translated. She says there's a second group approaching from the east. She can feel them through the ground. Impossible. Our scouts reported nothing. An explosion rocked the eastern wall. Aldemar stared at his daughter with new respect. How many? Celine closed her eyes, her bare feet pressed to the cold stone, reading the earth like a book. She signed. 43. No, 44. Moving fast. Position our archers east, Aldemar commanded. Now! The battle raged for 3 hours. Celine's impossible ability to sense enemy movements through vibrations saved dozens of lives. But as dawn broke and the raiders retreated, the true horror became clear. The moonstone amulet was gone. In the devastated vault, Aldemar stood before the empty pedestal where the ancient artifact had rested for 3 centuries. The legendary stone could command lesser wolves, bending their will to its bearer. This was planned, Kale signed to Celine, who translated for the king. They knew exactly where to go. Morgana appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her cold eyes. Perhaps if the princess hadn't distracted our forces with false warnings about the east. False. Aldemar's voice was thunder. She saved lives. Did she? Or did she help the raiders by dividing our defenses? Morgana's words dripped poison. And how convenient that her Omega friend claims to have seen Shadowfang markers. Perhaps she's been communicating with them all along. Kale's heart hammered. The accusation was absurd, but she could see it working on the council members' faces. Fear made people desperate for simple answers. That night, Kale felt the attack before she saw it. 3 assassins in her servants' quarters, blades gleaming. She fought with a skill that shocked them, dodging using her smaller frame as advantage. But she was outnumbered. Suddenly, Celine burst through the door. She couldn't have heard the struggle, but she'd felt it. The violent vibrations of combat had reached her chambers above. The princess moved like lightning, her years of silent rage finally channeled into purpose. She wasn't trained, but she was desperate. One assassin fell to her improvised weapon, a heavy candlestick. The others fled. They were wearing Morgana's house colors. Kale signed, breathing hard. She's trying to eliminate me before I can prove anything about Shadowfang. The next morning, Aldemar made an unprecedented announcement. Kale is hereby appointed royal interpreter, my daughter's official voice in court. She will hold rank equal to any advisor. The traditional alphas exploded in outrage. An Omega given power. Unthinkable. This violates every tradition. Lord Blackthorn roared. Then we make new traditions, Aldemar said quietly. My daughter has shown me that our old ways are not infallible. Morgana bowed her head, but her eyes promised murder. That evening, the elderly scholar who'd been translating for Celine arrived at her chambers, his hands shaking. He carried ancient texts, their pages yellowed with age. I found something, he signed clumsily. A prophecy. About you. The text was in old Lupin, barely legible. It spoke of a silent wolf, whose voice would either save or damn the kingdom. One who hears with hands and speaks with earth, whose voice will wake the sleeping death. Celine and Kale read it together, their shoulders touching. What is the sleeping death? Celine signed. The scholar's next words made their blood run cold. No one knows. But according to this, it's already beginning to wake. Outside the window, in the distant Blackwood forest, something ancient stirred in its centuries-long slumber. The council chamber erupted in chaos as Morgana presented the prophecy to the court, twisting every word. The silent wolf will wake the sleeping death, she proclaimed, holding the ancient text high. Princess Celine is not our salvation, she's our doom. The prophecy clearly warns that her existence threatens the entire kingdom. Celine stood before them, her hands moving in sharp, angry signs that Kale translated. You manipulate words you don't understand out of fear and ambition. Fear. Morgana laughed coldly. Your father may be blinded by sentiment, but the rest of us see clearly. You cannot even shift into wolf form. You're incomplete. Cursed. The words hit like physical blows. It was true. Celine had never transformed. At 17, when most wolves had been shifting since childhood, she remained trapped in human form. That night, Kale found Celine on the highest tower, staring at the full moon with tears on her cheeks. She's right, Celine signed. I'm broken. A wolf who cannot be a wolf. Kale took her hands gently. You're not broken. You're evolving. Your grandmother told me stories. Ancient wolves who didn't need to shift because their power manifested differently. They were called Earth Listeners. That's just legend. So were you until I met you. Kale smiled. Besides, I have secrets too. Over the next weeks, their bond deepened into something neither could name. They trained together. Kale teaching Celine combat, Celine showing Kale how to sense the Earth's vibrations. They studied the prophecy, finding an alternate translation the scholar had discovered. The sleeping death wasn't something Celine would cause. It was something she would fight. An ancient evil that fed on division among the packs. Look, Kale signed excitedly one evening. This passage says, unite the divided song. What if the silent wolf is meant to bring the packs together? Before Celine could respond, she gasped, her eyes going wide. She pressed both hands to the stone floor, her face draining of color. "What is it?" Kale signed urgently. "Earthquake. Massive. Coming from the north. In 3 days." "How can you possibly know?" "I just do. We need to evacuate the northern villages. Now." Aldemar believed his daughter. 3 days later, a devastating earthquake struck exactly where Celine predicted, destroying what would have been populated villages, but instead found them evacuated and empty. The kingdom began to whisper about the princess differently. Not as cursed, but as gifted. Morgana watched this shift with growing desperation. She sent a secret message to the Blackwood Forest, her words treasonous. "The girl is becoming too powerful. Move up your timeline. Attack during the Blood Moon Festival." The reply came written in blood. "We've been waiting for this. The sleeping death hungers." What neither Morgana nor the messenger knew was that Celine had felt the vibrations of that secret meeting, and now she knew the truth about who was betraying her father. The Blood Moon Festival transformed Thornvale into a realm of crimson lanterns and wild celebration. For one night each year, the ancient pack traditions ruled: ritual hunts, bonding ceremonies, and the recognition of new wolves. Celine stood in her ceremonial gown, watching festivities she couldn't hear. Kale remained at her side, signing descriptions of the music, the laughter, the joy. "I confronted Morgana's messenger," Celine signed. "She's planning something tonight. I felt her meeting with someone in the South Tower. We need to tell your father." Celine's hands flew up in alarm. She grabbed Kale's arm, her nails digging in. "They're here. 60. No, 70. Surrounding the festival grounds. Shadowfang." Kale's eyes widened. "Father. Father." But her warning was drowned in festival noise. Precious seconds ticked away as Kale fought through the crowd toward Aldemar. Celine, frustrated by her inability to shout, did something desperate. She slammed both fists into the stone ground with all her strength. The vibration rippled outward in a concentric wave. Every wolf felt it in their bones, an unnatural tremor that silenced the festival instantly. In that moment of eerie quiet, the attack began. Shadowfang raiders poured from the forest, their eyes glowing with unnatural red light, the influence of the moonstone. They moved in perfect coordination, clearly commanded by a single will. Chaos erupted. Aldemar shifted immediately, his massive grey wolf form tearing into the attackers. But the moonstone-controlled wolves fought without fear, without self-preservation. Kale grabbed a fallen sword, fighting with the skill of someone trained, not a servant's training. She moved like a warrior, protecting Celine as the princess tried desperately to help. Celine pressed her hands to the ground, calling out enemy positions that she relayed through frantic signs. Kale shouted the translations. 20 more from the west gate. Archers, adjust. They were being slaughtered. The moonstone's power was too great. Then Aldemar saw their true objective. A group of raiders wasn't fighting. They were running toward the royal vault. The attack was a diversion. "Protect the vault," he roared, but he was too far away, surrounded by enemies. Celine saw it too. Without thinking, she ran toward the vault, Kale right behind her. They arrived as the raiders were escaping with a second artifact, the lunar crown, which amplified the moonstone's power tenfold. The lead raider turned, and Kale's world stopped. She knew that face. Older, scarred, twisted by hatred, but unmistakable. "Uncle Kane," she whispered. He smiled cruelly. "Hello, little Kale." Hiding as an Omega was clever. But now. He raised his hand, the moonstone pulsing with dark light. "Now you'll watch everything you love burn." He commanded his wolves to attack. Aldemar threw himself between the moonstone-controlled wolves and his daughter, and 3 blades found his back simultaneously. Aldemar collapsed, blood spreading across ancient stone. Celine's scream was soundless agony as she fell beside her father. Kale stood frozen, staring at her uncle's retreating form. "Healers!" someone shouted. "The king is down." In the chaos, Cain and his raiders vanished into the forest with their stolen artifacts. The Blood Moon Festival had become a massacre. 43 dead, twice that wounded. For 3 days, Aldemar lingered between life and death. Celine never left his side, her hands constantly on him, trying desperately to sense if his heartbeat was growing stronger or weaker. On the 4th day, he opened his eyes. His voice was a rasp. "Celine." "Kale, closer." They leaned in as the elderly scholar prepared to translate. "Celine, you are my heir. The kingdom is yours." He coughed blood. "Kale. Protect her." Blood oath, binding. "Father, don't." Celine signed frantically, but Aldemar was already cutting his palm, then theirs, pressing their hands together. "By blood and moon I bind you. Protector and protected. Life for life." The ancient words glowed briefly with silver light. Then his eyes found Kale with unexpected clarity. "I know what you are. Who you are. Shadowfang, Prince." Kale's breath caught. "How?" "Your eyes. Same as your father's. He was my friend. Before Morgana's faction murdered him." Aldemar gripped her hand weakly. She feared. Shadowfang's growing power. Orchestrated. The purge. Made it look like rebellion. The truth crashed over Celine like a wave. She pulled her hand from Kale's, signing sharply. "You lied to me? Please let me explain. All this time you were using me. Getting close to find evidence for your revenge." "No." Kale's voice broke as she signed desperately. "Yes, at first I came here for proof. But Celine, you changed everything. You were the first person I've been honest with in 10 years. The first person who saw me, not the role I was playing. Were you honest? Or is this just another performance? I love you." The signs were simple, devastating. "That's the only thing that's completely true." Aldemar coughed again, drawing their attention. "Cain. Your uncle. Was good once. The moonstone corrupted him. He's trying to wake. The Void Wolf. Ancient evil beneath. Blackwood. If he succeeds." The king's eyes closed. He was still breathing but barely. The council met in emergency session. Morgana made her move immediately. "The king is incapacitated. His daughter is unfit to rule. I propose." "You propose treason," Celine signed, her hands sharp as blades. Kale translated, her voice cold. "You orchestrated the Shadowfang purge. You murdered Kale's family. You've been working with Cain to destabilize the kingdom. Lies from a desperate Omega. I have proof." Kale pulled out parchments. Morgana's secret correspondence, found in the South Tower. "Your own handwriting. Your seal." Morgana's face twisted with rage. "You little," she lunged, but Celine was faster. The princess caught her wrist, holding it with impossible strength born from years of silent rage. The guards arrested Morgana and her co-conspirators. That night, Kale explained everything. How she survived, how she trained, how she came to Thornvale seeking justice but found something she never expected. Home. Celine stood before the assembled court, her ceremonial crown heavy on her head. At 17, she was now Alpha Queen of Thornvale, the youngest in history. Through Kale, she addressed her people. "Our kingdom faces extinction. Cain has the moonstone and lunar crown. He will use them to wake the Void Wolf, a creature that feeds on our division, our hatred, our inability to understand each other." Lord Blackthorn stood, his scarred face skeptical. "And what can a deaf girl who cannot even shift do against such power?" Celine's hands moved with quiet confidence. "Something impossible. Something that requires you to trust in what you don't understand, just as I've been forced to do my entire life." She laid out her plan. The moonstone controlled wolves through vocal commands. Its power worked through sound. But an army that communicated through sign language would be immune. They could coordinate attacks the enemy couldn't intercept or command. "Recruit everyone you once dismissed," Kale translated as Celine signed. The deaf warriors. The Omega outcasts. The Shadowfang refugees who escaped Cain's corruption. We'll teach them all to sign. We'll become the silent army. This is madness, someone muttered. This is innovation, countered the elderly scholar. War has always been won by those who adapt. Over the next month, something extraordinary happened. Hundreds volunteered. Wolves who'd been marginalized, overlooked, deemed too weak. Deaf warriors who'd been hidden away emerged from villages. Shadowfang survivors came forward, seeking redemption. Kale helped lead the training, revealing her true combat skills. She was brilliant, a warrior princess who'd hidden as a servant for years. But Morgana had one final card to play. From her prison cell, she had loyal guards smuggle out a message. That night they attempted a coup. 40 traditionalist alphas attacked the palace, intent on killing Celine and restoring the proper order. They never heard the silent army coming. Celine's soldiers moved through the palace like ghosts, communicating through signs in the darkness. By dawn, the coup was crushed without waking most of the city. Celine stood in the throne room as the captured alphas were brought before her. Through Kale she signed. You are exiled. All of you. You chose tradition over survival. You chose pride over adaptation. Leave my kingdom and never return. Morgana watched from her cell, her life's work in ruins. You'll fail, she hissed. The Void Wolf cannot be defeated by hand gestures and hope. Celine turned to her, signing slowly so even Morgana could understand the shape of the words. Watch me. In the Blackwood forest, Cain placed the lunar crown upon his head, the moonstone pulsing in his hand. Around him, his army of corrupted wolves stood ready, 2,000 strong. But beneath them, something far older stirred. The ground cracked. Trees withered. A darkness spread like infection. The Void Wolf was waking, and it was hungry for the chaos Cain had fed it. The sky above Blackwood Forest turned the color of bruises. Celine felt it from miles away, a wrongness in the earth so profound it made her collapse. What is it? Kale signed frantically, catching her. The Void Wolf. So wait, can feel it. Pulling at everything. Trying to tear us apart from within. Cain stood at the heart of the corruption, the lunar crown burning with dark light. The moonstone had consumed him completely. His eyes were hollow voids, his voice no longer his own. Come, little niece, he called out, knowing they would hear. Come witness the new order. The packs will burn, and from their ashes I will rule. Celine's army marched, 3,000 strong, moving in perfect silence. Half were traditional Thornvale wolves. Half were Shadowfang survivors and outcasts. All communicated through sign. But as they entered Blackwood, the Void Wolf's influence hit them like a physical force. Wolves turned on each other, old grudges surfacing. Thornvale warriors attacked Shadowfang soldiers. The carefully built unity began to fracture. It feeds on division. Celine signed desperately. It's making us hate each other. Kale shouted translations, but the fighting was spreading. Years of animosity couldn't be erased by a few weeks of training. Then Celine understood. The prophecy wasn't about fighting the Void Wolf with weapons. It was about starving it of what it needed. We need perfect unity. Pack bond spanning everyone. With me at the center. Kale's eyes widened. That's impossible. A pack bond has never included more than a dozen wolves. This would be thousands. It could kill you. I'm the silent wolf. This is what I was born to do. Celine stood, addressing her army through Kale. I need you to trust me. Everyone. Link your minds to mine. Let me be your center. But you cannot shift. Lord Blackthorn protested. A pack bond requires an alpha wolf form. Celine closed her eyes, pressing her bare feet to the corrupted earth. For 17 years, she'd been told she was broken because she couldn't shift. But maybe she'd been waiting for the right reason. She felt every soldier around her. Their fear, their hope, their desperate need to belong to something greater. She felt Kale's love, her father's pride, the Earth's ancient memory. And for the first time in her life, Princess Selene transformed. Her wolf form was magnificent, silver fur that seemed to hold moonlight, larger than any alpha, with eyes that swirled with purple energy. But strangest of all, when she howled, no sound emerged. Instead, the earth itself resonated. Every wolf felt it in their bones, a vibration that bypassed ears entirely, speaking directly to the soul. The void wolf shrieked as its power began to wane. Selene's consciousness expanded, linking with thousands of minds. The pack bond formed like a web of light, with her at the center. Through their link, every soldier could feel what the others felt. Thornvale wolves experienced Shadowfang pain. Shadowfang survivors felt Thornvale loss. They became one. The silent army moved as a single organism, guided by Selene's consciousness. They communicated through sign and spiritual connection, a level of coordination no military force had ever achieved. The Void Wolf manifested fully, a massive shadow creature of pure malice, with 1,000 eyes and mouths that screamed discord. It tried to tear the pack bond apart, sending waves of hatred and fear. But Selene's silent howl disrupted its power. Every time it tried to divide them, her resonance brought them back together. Cain fought at the Void Wolf's side, leading his corrupted army. Kale faced him, her heart breaking. This man had raised her, trained her, loved her, before the moonstone poisoned everything good in him. "Uncle, please," she called out, dodging his strikes. "This isn't you. The stone is using you. The stone freed me." Cain's voice was distorted. "Freed me from weakness, from mercy, from humanity," Kale finished sadly. She signed to Selene through their pack bond. "I have to end this. He's too far gone. There might be another way." Selene's response came as pure feeling. "Trust me." Selene approached Cain in her wolf form. Her silent howl focused entirely on him. She pushed past the moonstone's corruption, searching for the man underneath. She found him, small, terrified, trapped. "Uncle," she projected the thought directly into his mind. "You're not evil. You're in pain. Let me help you." For one moment, Cain's eyes cleared. He saw Kale, saw what he'd become. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his own voice returning. "I only wanted justice for your father." But the stone. With the last of his strength, Cain tore the lunar crown from his head and shattered the moonstone against a rock. The artifacts screamed as they broke, dark energy exploding outward. The Void Wolf, suddenly cut off from its power source, began to dissipate. It shrieked in fury, but Selene's pack bond held firm. United, the wolves' combined will was stronger than ancient hate. Cain collapsed in Kale's arms, his corruption fading. "Tell your father. Sorry. Tell him Shadowfang always loved Thornvale. We were brothers once. We will be again," Kale promised through tears. Cain smiled, then his eyes closed for the last time. The battlefield fell silent as the Void Wolf dissolved completely, starved of the division it needed to exist. The war was over. 3 months later, Selene stood in a classroom filled with young wolves, some deaf, most hearing, all learning sign language together. It was now mandatory education throughout the kingdom. Kale entered, no longer dressed as a servant but as co-ruler, the Queen's shield they called her. Not through marriage, but through recognition that their bond transcended traditional hierarchy. "Ready for the ceremony," Kale signed. "Almost." Selene smiled, watching the children practice. A Thornvale pup was helping a Shadowfang pup with a difficult sign. Former enemies, now friends. They'd merged the kingdoms, Thornvale and Shadowfang, once divided, now unified under principles of inclusion and understanding. Omega rights were enshrined in law. Sign language became the second tongue of every citizen. At the unification ceremony, Selene stood before thousands, her hands moving as Kale spoke her words aloud. "We didn't just survive. We revolutionized what it means to be pack. We learned that true strength isn't in domination, It's in understanding that the most powerful voice isn't always the loudest. That what makes us different makes us stronger. The crowd, a mix of every faction, every rank, erupted in applause and howls. That evening, alone on their tower, Celine and Kale watched the sunset. Kale signed. "Do you ever regret it? Everything you went through?" Celine considered, then signed back. "Every moment of pain led me to you. Led us to this. So no, I don't regret it." "I love you," Kale signed. "I know," Celine signed back, grinning. "You told me in the most dramatic way possible." They laughed, Kale aloud, Celine in the silent way that made her whole body shake with joy. Below them their kingdom thrived. A place where silence had become the most powerful language of all, where being different was celebrated, where love transcended every boundary. The silent wolf had found her voice, and it had changed the world.